Hi, just going over a few points here. I made quite a long video titled Russian Attack or Internal Tyranny ? And that's quite a long video, so I'm making this one a bit shorter just to put forward the bullet points, the main bullet points, because in the other video I'm connecting a lot of information to deliver what I believe is a balanced and actually rational perspective on world events, world and national events at the moment. So that's quite a long video. It goes into detail about quite a lot of stuff besides the Russian attack, but this one I want to put forward some main bullet points here, and I hope any British MPs who are listening who oppose this Tory government, I hope that you will take strength from my words as a British citizen and actually start following the guidance that I'm going to share here. Okay, so you know, as I stated in my video, there's really not a shred of evidence to connect this terrible attack on British soil. There's not a shred of evidence to link it to the Kremlin and Putin. We do understand that this Tory government do serve a Zionist agenda. They've stated that they're Zionist. David Cameron stated in 2009, I am a Zionist. Okay, whatever that really means, because I do not connect it with Jews. Okay, the fact that Jews, they've usurped the Judaic faith and through that persuaded otherwise decent people to follow their politic. That they've convinced them that, you know, this is the right way and we are representing God. Okay, so, you know, people do get duped. That's why people tell lies, to dupe people and play on their fears, play on their prejudices. They feed prejudice and fear, xenophobia. That is what they thrive on. And obviously elitism, because they do follow a structure where there are some people who are considered superior for no other reason than they've got lots of money and gold, and other people are inferior because they haven't got lots of money and they haven't got any gold. Okay, that is the basic principle of their elitist system. It's got nothing to do with their intelligence, nothing to do with their true humanity that makes them fit to be leaders. In fact, the more horrible they are, the more likely they are to amass huge amounts of wealth and gold. Okay, so basically governed by criminals. We need to understand that, understand it, and understand how it is reflected in the events that are put forward through our media, that are highlighted through our media. So there's been a massive media attention on this attack in Russia. There's been a national response to it. You know, look at the amount of people, the teams that's been involved in this now. This government has immediately seized on this event to launch its Cold War against Russia, even talk about launching a cyber attack against Russia, and, you know, never mind that Britain is gas hungry basically in winter. And so, alright then, if we run out of gas next winter, we have a very cold winter, then it won't matter. People will just freeze in their homes, won't they? You know, this is putting Britain at risk. They're sending British soldiers onto the Ukrainian border. Okay, they're increasing British troops on the Ukrainian border. So they're putting British military, British lives at risk. And of course, there is a risk that this whole thing could escalate into something a lot more serious. Because, as I say, what has Russia done? What has Russia done? It's thwarted the Zionist plot for the Greater Israel, hasn't it? Because Syria is part of the Greater Israel project. Okay, I'll just get it up for you now. So, here we are. This is the Greater Israel project. So, according to the founding father of Zionism, Theodor Herzl, The area of the Jewish state stretches from the Brook of Egypt to the Euphrates. According to Rabbi Fishman, the Promised Land extends from the River of Egypt up to the Euphrates. It includes parts of Syria and Lebanon. And we know that there's been a lot of conflict in Lebanon, directly instigated by Israel. Okay, so look, there's the thing. Look how much of Syria is included. This is their promised land, apparently. All of Iraq. Okay, this is part of their promised land. But I'm going to make a video to them about this later on today, so watch out for that. I don't know what the title of it will be yet, but please watch out for that, because, you know, as I say, it's time now for turning a few tables. So we've got a Tory government that is willing immediately to seize on this event, make a huge big fuss about it, and launch a Cold War against Russia, and even a cyber attack against Russia, and even going around Europe persuading other nations to expel their Russian diplomats. And, you know, that's a terrible thing. You know, it's easy to say, oh, we've expelled 23 Russian diplomats. Imagine what it's like for those people who were in Britain and then suddenly they're told, pack your bags, go. That's, you know, that is. And for what? For what reason? For what reason have their lives been turned upside down? We haven't got a reason. We haven't got a reason. And we can see how they employed the media, this government employed the media to immediately put forward their narrative, didn't they? They had a narrative, a pre-prepared narrative that the British press was going to cover. That this was Russia, evil Russia, we've got to launch an attack against them, they've killed citizens on British soil. Okay. Now, we know that false flag events have been used by extreme, you know, the more extreme a group is, a political philosophy is, the more likely that they are to resort to things like false flag events to justify military action and to justify hurting whoever they see as the enemy, whoever's standing in their way, basically. Russia has stood in the way of the West's plans, really, to install ISIS in Syria. That's what's happened. But there's no way that this Tory government could turn around and say to the British people, we've got to launch a Cold War against Russia because they've helped to defeat ISIS in Syria. Can they? When they're telling us that, you know, ISIS are a terrorist group. You know, imagine the BBC trying to... Even the BBC couldn't spin silk out of that one, could they? Well, what they think is silk, but actually it's jute. It hurts the innards to swallow it. Now, look at this government. This is from June 2017. The Tories are forming a coalition with a party backed by terrorists. Say the Independent. The UDA is a violent, loyalist paramilitary group, which is still active today. Just weeks ago, it murdered a man in broad daylight in Northern Ireland. He was shot dead in a Sainsbury's car park in front of horrified shoppers and his 3-year-old son. Okay. So, this is a Prime Minister who didn't have enough votes to form her own government. Instead of turning to British MPs for support, she turns to Irish MPs who are part of a political party with a violent, a violent loyalist paramilitary group that inspires actions like this. Because that's what extremists do. They inspire extremist people. They empower them. They justify their hate. That's what they thrive on. Hate, division, judgments against each other. All of these things, that is what they thrive on. So we've got a government that is in cahoots with a violent loyalist paramilitary group. and suddenly there's an event like this that's happened on our British soil, you know. I mean, Boris Johnson here, telling a pack of lies. What is this man doing in politics? You know, he belongs on Have I Got News For You? Political satire. That is where he belongs. What on earth is he doing as a spokesperson for our country? Look at him, sat with the British flag behind him, telling a pack of lies. Again. And we can't, you know, we can't forget that extremism within Britain over Brexit, and a British MP was murdered. You know, that was all brushed aside by his big red bus saying how the NHS is going to get 350 million a week. We've got Theresa May going on about how she's not going to tolerate a threat to the lives of British citizens. Really? This is a woman whose policies have murdered how many? Thousands upon thousands of British citizens have been made ill, driven to early death, or driven to suicide. Thousands driven to suicide. Now, I'm not just talking, there was the people on benefits who were sick and disabled. They just stripped them of benefits. They even stripped them of housing benefit. People were made homeless. Okay, such terrible things happen to people. Go and have a look at your city centres. You can witness it. The poverty, the shops closing, communities that look like ghost towns. This is what they have delivered to Britain. Gruelling poverty. And I've made a video, a tribute to our VIPs, and I do, please watch it, because it's very serious what's happening, you know, to children, and it is going to get worse because this austerity is biting, and apparently it's permanent. You know, that's what the Tories have said. It's permanent. So, you know, to me, that's economic terrorism being inflicted against the people of Britain by a government that forms an alliance with a violent loyalist paramilitary group, and next thing we're having violent attacks on our soil, and they're being blamed on this or that. Now, you know, here I want to go to this Manchester bomber, and again, and it's getting a common thing that we're finding, that these people who commit terrorist acts in Britain, they have some connection to MI5. You know, I'm not going to read out the article. You can scroll down, I'll leave you a link to it. But this guy, you know, and his dad were working for MI5 in Libya. So, and then suddenly there's a terrorist attack in Manchester that then justifies even more, what? Removal of our rights. And we've got people who, thousands of people in Britain now, which is just so, it is so ridiculous how many people in Britain are on 0-hour contracts, and that these agencies have been set up, and people have to go to the agency and through the agency get employed. So, you know, there's factories. A British-based factory can't employ British people on a living wage and give them all their workers' rights. Instead, they go to an agency and get their staff through the agency. So, all on 0-hour contracts. So the agency is basically like the guy in the truck who turns up at a yard and there's hundreds of people stood there all waiting, hundreds of people all waiting for a job, and they go, you, yeah, you come in today. And then, no, sorry, we don't need you. So basically what the 0-hour contract is it's asking British citizens to sign a piece of paper that states they can be treated like an illegal immigrant by employers. That is what the 0-hour contract is. It is a document stating that you are happy to be a British citizen and be treated like an illegal immigrant. Because illegal immigrants, that is exactly how they're employed. Yeah, we need you. Crap wages. No, barely any workers' rights if you get sick or things like this. you know, right, no, we don't need you today, bye, yeah, you'll just have to go and starve on the street. Because that's where the benefit system comes in. Because there are people on 0-hour contracts who are being left with no money for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you know, because, oh, we don't need you for the next few weeks. Okay? And then how do they pay the rent then? How easy is it for a person on 0-hour contracts to go somewhere and say, well, I'm not employed this week, so I need some unemployment benefit and some housing benefit, because otherwise I'm going to get down on my mortgage payments, I'm going to lose my home. It takes weeks and weeks. You're talking over a month. At the very least, 6 to 7 weeks just to get housing benefit. And about the same applying for unemployment benefit. So people are being left in a gap here. There's a hole that people are falling into regularly. And being dependent on food banks. This is happening, that working people are being forced to depend on food banks. Okay? That is what the 0-hour contract delivers. So, no. Just the fact that they've managed to slip this in. They've slipped all these things in under the rhetoric of war and austerity and the banking collapse and blah, 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 blah. You know, they can create money out of thin air when they want to give somebody a mortgage, can't they? But, oh, when it comes to, you know, supporting a whole society, a whole country, a whole nation of people, oh no, sorry, there's not enough money. We can't create enough money out of thin air for you. We can only create money out of thin air for us. It's just crazy. It is crazy. It is totally crazy. And it's a very serious matter. Like I say, we've got a government, so this government needs investigating. Now, I mentioned about suicides in the NHS. And this is from The Guardian. And it is extremely serious. You know, our NHS is being robbed. The people are dying because they can't get emergency life-saving operations and treatment. Hospitals are running out of equipment, you know, of things like sterile bandages and stuff like this. They're literally running out. The NHS is being starved. It's literally being strangled. And the staff are under such pressure. Such pressure. NHS staff are killing themselves. NHS staff have been driven to suicide because it's so difficult. What they get to witness, they're on the front line of the impacts of austerity in Britain, because people, when they're suffering poverty, when they're suffering depression, when they've got no security, are more inclined to be ill or to do things to themselves that are going to make them more ill, like, for example, drinking lots of alcohol to numb the pain of just your day-to-day existence, or taking drugs, or whatever, you know. And the suicide rate is going up. There's more and more people committing suicide in Britain or attempting suicide, and the NHS staff then have to deal with these attempted suicides. They're the ones that have been receiving the bodies. They are witnessing the impacts of a terrorist attack. And I really, you know, what is more important here? My heart goes out to the family, you know, and community that this terrible attack has happened, of course. But at the same time, there's been a terrorist attack, an economic terrorist attack against the people of Britain. And, you know, really thwarting everything that men like my grandfather and my grandmother gave so much for. My grandfather gave his life for Britain, you know, that people have economic stability, that people have resource. If the private market cannot provide, that people have, you know, resource to adequate living standards, and that we have a health system, that we have a fair transport system that people aren't having to pay a quarter of the wages sometimes just on transport, because they're being literally sucked dry of cash by these privatised transport suppliers. And you know, the whole Tory culture, this what they, you know, is their culture, isn't it? The Victorian consciousness that we're superior because we've got loads of money, and you're inferior because you haven't got any money. And that's how it works, you know, that's how God decides who's going to be the leader. We're natural born leaders because we are capable of being so heartless we can amass huge amounts of cash and then use that cash to actually oppress you all even more. And as I say, this whole government now needs investigating. I think Theresa May needs to be arrested, because if this is, as I strongly and lawfully suspect, this nerve gas thing, you know, we need to find out who did this attack, because how much more of this stuff have they got? Okay, and what worse events are they going to resort to in order to justify the continuance of this Cold War against Russia? And you know, at what point, how far will they go in helping Israel, in helping the Greater Israel Project? Okay, you know, we need to accept reality. We need to accept reality. These things. This isn't a conspiracy theory, is it? And we look at the world events at play today. This isn't a conspiracy theory, is it? This is what they've said, and this is what is going on. And we cannot forget that this is a government that the Tory government has formed an alliance with a violent loyalist paramilitary group. They've stated that they're Zionists. Well, I'm sorry. You can't state that you're a Zionist, because Zionism is fundamentally opposed to Christianity, and apparently we're a Christian nation. So how can members of Parliament stand for election when they've stated, like David Cameron did in 2009, I am a Zionist? And that whole philosophy behind, you know, you can't just say I am a Zionist. What is a Zionist then? Oh, go and look at Zionist philosophy. It is inherently racist. It's fundamentally racist. So how can you say that you're a Zionist and stand to take part in any politics in Britain? Because you're basically saying I am with I stand by a racist organisation. I support racism. I support xenophobia. And look at what's been in play over the last few months, over the last few years in Britain. We've seen this xenophobic rhetoric creep up and up and up and up and up, and whipping up fears among the general public. We've witnessed Cambridge Analytica, that we know this Tory party is directly involved with as well. She's got one of their lead people, you know, the lead Brexit campaigners, who has revealed how low he's prepared to stoop, you know, outing the whistleblower as gay, and actually putting him at risk because he's Pakistani, and it's illegal in Pakistan to be gay. So, you know, this is the kind of people that is in power in the Tory government, and that is internal tyranny. Now, if through their influence and their agents that this attack has been planned by them, by the government itself, by who their intelligence has managed to get a hold of what? They've got such powers they can get a hold of nerve gas. Well, you know, perhaps a violent loyalist paramilitary group has got access to nerve gas. And then, oh yeah, we'll put that there. And yeah, we'll blame it on Russia, and then Cold War against Russia. Come on, troops on the Ukrainian border. Everybody, come on, Europe, stand behind Britain. We've suffered a chemical weapons attack. But meanwhile, we can ignore, can't we, what is going on with the NHS. And how many people are dying directly through their austerity, which, you know, like I say, they've said it's to be permanent. But we don't need to worry about the risks to the lives of thousands of British people imposed by Tory policies, because, you know, is there any difference whether you murdered through economic policy or whether you murdered through nerve gas? What is the difference? Oh, it's a lot longer and drawn out. You'll experience months and months of gruelling poverty and depression and queuing up outside of food banks. You'll suffer humiliation. You'll suffer feelings of worthlessness. You'll feel like you are worthless and nothing at all. In fact, you will be completely terrorised into being, to reaching the point where you say, I can't live like this anymore. This isn't a life. My humanity is completely oppressed. So the Tory government is an inhumane government. They are inhumane. We heard all the lies about Brexit, and we've seen how people were manipulated by, again, a media type organisation that takes control over the internet media platforms and actually targets individuals. And what do they state? You don't win on facts, you win on emotion. And the emotion that they most depend on, as he goes on to state after that, fear. Fear is the best emotion. That's the most powerful emotion, because there's fear in everybody living in our present economic system. And then you can manipulate that fear, that energy of fear. You can manipulate, you can give it channels to run through, to escape through. Create scapegoats, that's the scapegoat. We have energy within us, and it's up to us whether we use that energy for the good or the bad, you know. And these people have got bad intentions because they're not very intelligent. Like I say, he belongs in political satire, and they really have made, you know, this is a complete joke. They've made Britain a laughing stock, because everybody, even the EU members, are now questioning, well, you know, maybe we were a bit hasty at expelling our Russian diplomats. So it's who is the risk here? This government needs suspending. That is what has got to happen. I urge MPs now to call for a public inquiry into this, and to look at exactly what was going on between members of the Tory government and military agents and intelligence, and really what is going on here, because they were very quick to come with this narrative to support the attack as coming from Russia. They were there straight away with it. And that, to me, and all the media, you know, like to the extent to which they have their absolute control over the media, that the media will immediately report what they're saying as a fact as well, you know, and support their narrative. This is looking very, very, very serious, and it's time for Britain to wake up to it and to get back with our humanity. Remember, we're a Christian country. Jesus, a man who stood up for compassion and mercy and kindness and honesty and righteousness. That's Jesus. Okay, now anybody who's saying they're a Zionist, well, you know, if you Zionists, you want to be Zionists, but if you attack us, we will defend ourselves, and we will take steps to remove you from our shores if we discover that actually you have been covertly performing terrorist attacks in Britain directly through your influences into government and our intelligence and even our media, then that is a very serious thing. That is actually high treason. So we need to look at this now, because we're talking about millions of lives here. We're talking about our children's future. We're talking about the future of the next generation here, and we need to speak out. We really do. And as I say, suspend this government, suspend them, arrest them and investigate them, because something really bad has been happening here.